In 15th century Europe, men lined up at churches claiming witches had stolen their penises, and judges took them seriously. No, this isn't a twisted legend or crude joke. It was a legal accusation, backed by books, sermons, and public trials. But how did so many truly believe the impossible? And why did their fear spread like wildfire across generations? Medieval men had a problem that made tax collectors seem friendly. They genuinely believed witches could steal their penis. Not damage it or curse it, actually steal it, gone, vanished completely. This wasn't some theoretical fear either. The reports started flooding in during the 1500s across Europe. Men waking up to discover their manhood had simply disappeared overnight. These weren't vague complaints about bedroom troubles either. These guys were treating their missing manhood like stolen property that needed to be reported to the authorities. But here's where it gets strange. The specifics were incredibly detailed. Some claimed their stolen member was kept in a wooden box by the witch. Others insisted it had been transformed into a small bird. A few even swore they could hear it chirping from a nest somewhere. What makes this bizarre is how they described losing it. No pain whatsoever, no blood, no visible injury, just complete absence, like someone had used an eraser on their anatomy. That conversation probably started with, "Honey, we need to talk about something unusual." Then there's the church response. Religious authorities took these claims seriously. The Malleus Maleficarum documented case after case of genital theft. It included confessions from accused witches who admitted to the crime. They described their techniques and where they hid their stolen goods. Yet the most telling aspect was how society treated these stories. Courts heard official testimony. Witnesses came forward under oath. Men were literally hiring bounty hunters to track down their stolen anatomy. The entire legal system treated genital theft as a legitimate crime. Moreover, the belief wasn't limited to one region. France documented cases. Germany recorded dozens. Italy collected confessions. This was a continent-wide panic about vanishing manhood. Men would travel hundreds of miles seeking help from priests and healers. What's even stranger is how consistent these stories became. Men from different countries described identical experiences, same symptoms, same timeline, same recovery methods. Either medieval witches had incredibly standardized training programs, or something else was creating these shared delusions, which raises the question of what was really happening to create such widespread belief across medieval Europe. The answer involves multiple factors working together. But first, we need to understand how medieval society's most powerful institution provided the perfect foundation for these fears. Building on those widespread beliefs, the medieval church had established a framework that made genital panic inevitable. Christian doctrine viewed the human body as a spiritual battlefield where every inch represented contested territory between God and Satan. This religious worldview shaped everything. The genitals occupied the front lines of this cosmic war. Church leaders taught that sexual organs served as the primary gateway for demonic influence. Lust didn't happen naturally according to their teaching. According to church teaching, your body parts were essentially vulnerable to supernatural hijacking. This created a paranoid relationship between men and their own bodies. Normal sexual function became suspicious. Morning arousal meant demonic visitation. Sexual dreams indicated witchcraft. Men learned to distrust their own anatomy as potential traitors to their salvation. Furthermore, the church promoted a specific theory about witch operations. These women weren't acting from personal grudges. Witches were commissioned agents of hell with official assignments to corrupt human souls through sexual dysfunction. These women were basically Satan's field agents with a very specific area of expertise. Any failure of sexual performance became immediate evidence of spiritual attack. Can't perform with your wife? Witchcraft. Lost interest in intimacy? Demonic curse. The church had created a framework where normal human variation became proof of magical interference. Then, there's how priests reinforced these ideas every Sunday. Sermons described how witches targeted male sexuality to destroy Christian families. They explained the spiritual mechanics of genital theft. Church services included regular warnings about supernatural threats to male anatomy. The doctrine also provided clear solutions that kept people dependent on church authority. Prayer could restore missing parts. Holy water could break curses, but only if the victim truly repented of whatever sin had made them vulnerable initially. Most importantly, church authorities validated these beliefs through official channels. Bishops wrote letters confirming cases, cardinals authorized investigations. When the highest levels of religious authority endorsed these ideas, regular people had no choice but to accept them as fact. What made it even more convincing was how medieval medicine filled in the technical details. Science and religion worked hand in hand. While the church explained why genital theft happened, medieval doctors had theories about exactly how it worked. Medieval medical theory made supernatural genital theft seem scientifically inevitable. The dominant system was based on 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Everything in your body resulted from the balance of these mysterious substances. Your sexual function was apparently controlled by a complex system of invisible body fluids. Medical education taught this as fact. This humor-based system made magical interference seem reasonable. If your body was controlled by mysterious forces nobody could see, then outside magical forces could mess with the same system. A witch didn't need to physically touch your genitals, she just had to magically disrupt your humoral balance. What's more, medieval doctors didn't separate medicine from magic. They used astrology to diagnose illnesses. They prescribed charms alongside herbs. They consulted star charts before surgery. Medieval physicians combined medical knowledge with supernatural remedies in ways that would horrify modern doctors. Sexual dysfunction fit perfectly into this magical medical framework. Male performance problems were diagnosed as blocked vital forces or corrupted humors. Treatment involved realigning spiritual energies or countering magical interference rather than addressing physical causes. Then there's the concept of invisible illness that was central to medieval medicine. Doctors regularly treated conditions with no visible cause. If someone complained of unexplained pain, magical interference was the obvious diagnosis. Medieval medicine had an explanation for every problem that actual medicine couldn't solve. Penile disappearance fell into the category of blocked vital forces. Sexual organs required specific life energy to function. Witches could interrupt this flow through magical techniques. The penis would still be present, but rendered invisible by supernatural interference. Witches could apparently disconnect your anatomy like unplugging a device. Moreover, medical texts described specific treatments for magically stolen genitals. They recommended herbs that could counter witchcraft. They provided instructions for rituals that would restore blocked energy flow. These were official medical treatments prescribed by trained physicians. This medical validation was crucial for spreading the belief. When a licensed doctor confirmed that someone's penis had been magically stolen, it carried the weight of any other medical diagnosis. Doctors apparently needed special training to diagnose supernatural anatomy theft. However, the medical theory only explained how theft worked mechanically. The real fuel came from detailed instruction manuals. These books changed everything completely. But even the most detailed manuals couldn't have spread these beliefs without something that gave people step-by-step instructions on what to expect. While medicine explained the technical aspects, witchcraft manuals provided the detailed playbook that turned fears into specific accusations. These books didn't just document existing beliefs, they actively created new ones by teaching people what to expect and how to respond. The influence was massive. The Malleus Maleficarum served as the definitive guide for recognizing penis theft. The manual describes specific rituals witches used to steal male genitals, complete instructions, required materials, timing preferences. The manual read like an instruction guide for supernatural theft operations. But the manual went beyond describing the theft process. It provided vivid descriptions of what victims would experience. Readers learned how stolen penises were stored. Some were kept in wooden boxes. Others were transformed into living creatures that nested in trees. Witches apparently operated elaborate storage facilities for stolen anatomy. Then there are the victim testimonies included. Detailed accounts of men who had supposedly recovered their stolen parts. Complete stories of how they discovered the theft, who they suspected, and what methods worked for recovery. These became templates other men could follow. The manual spread rapidly through church networks and legal systems. Judges consulted it for witchcraft trials. Priests referenced it in sermons. The specific imagery became the standard way to understand genital theft. What's significant is how reading these descriptions made people interpret personal problems as witchcraft. Temporary sexual dysfunction could suddenly be recognized as early-stage genital theft. The manual essentially turned normal sexual problems into evidence of supernatural crime. Furthermore, the book standardized the recovery process. It described prayers that could break curses. It recommended saints to petition. It provided instructions for identifying the responsible witch. The book served as a complete guide to recovering your stolen anatomy. This standardization made stories more consistent and believable in court. When multiple witnesses described identical experiences using the same terminology, it created the impression of organized criminal activity. The manual transformed isolated complaints into what appeared to be organized supernatural criminal activity. Most importantly, the authors presented themselves as objective investigators rather than religious authorities promoting beliefs. They claimed to have interviewed hundreds of victims and documented dozens of successful recoveries. Yet many of the experiences they documented had much more ordinary explanations rooted in medieval sleep experiences. Dreams held special significance in medieval culture. However, understanding why people believed their dreams were real supernatural events reveals another crucial piece of the puzzle. Those manual descriptions matched perfectly with something medieval people experienced regularly but misunderstood: vivid dreams and sleep disorders. Medieval culture had a fundamentally different relationship with sleep experiences than we do today. Night terrors were considered supernatural visits. Dreams weren't considered products of imagination. They were treated as direct spiritual experiences where real events happened to your soul while your body was unconscious. Medieval people treated their sleep experiences as real spiritual events. Many documented cases began identically. A man would have a nightmare involving a threatening woman who attacked him sexually. He would wake up feeling violated and immediately examine his body for evidence of supernatural interference. Men would wake up and immediately check themselves for signs of supernatural theft. But sleep paralysis created the most convincing evidence. This condition causes temporary inability to move while waking up, often with hallucinations of threatening figures in the room. Medieval men would find themselves unable to move while sensing a malevolent woman near their bed. Being unable to move while sensing a threatening presence was considered definitive proof of supernatural attack. The boundary between sleep and waking was incredibly blurry in medieval culture. People regularly reported conversations with dead relatives during sleep. They described visits from angels or demons. These experiences were treated as real events in a spiritual dimension. Then, there's how medieval culture included beliefs about nocturnal demons like incubi and succubi. These creatures attacked sleeping humans for sexual purposes. Men who had disturbing sexual dreams would wake up convinced they had been visited by supernatural entities. Sexual nightmares were considered the perfect time for witches to strike. Physical sensations accompanying vivid dreams could be interpreted as evidence of magical attack. Numbness or tingling in the genital area during sleep would confirm that supernatural interference had occurred. Dream sensations became physical evidence of supernatural interference. However, not all cases originated from sleep disorders. Many accusations targeted real women with specific knowledge about male sexuality. These women posed different threats. Yet there was something else that made certain women particularly vulnerable to accusations of supernatural theft. Beyond sleep explanations, many accusations targeted real women with genuine expertise in herbs and healing. These weren't random strangers. They were often the same women men had relied on for medical help. Today's healer could become tomorrow's supernatural criminal suspect. The transition happened quickly and unpredictably. Medieval women who specialized in healing occupied a complicated position. Men needed their knowledge about fertility treatments and sexual enhancement. Yet that expertise made them capable of causing the exact problems they claimed to treat. Relying on someone who could both cure and cause your most personal problems created obvious anxiety. Many accused women were established midwives or herbalists with extensive knowledge about male sexual function. They understood which plants could affect libido. They knew remedies for impotence. They could provide treatments that genuinely affected sexual performance. These women possessed detailed knowledge about male sexual function that men found both useful and threatening. This knowledge created both dependence and suspicion. Men relied on these women when they had problems, but feared what else that knowledge might enable. A woman who knew how to enhance sexual function obviously knew how to destroy it. Trusting someone with intimate medical knowledge while fearing their potential for sabotage created constant tension. Furthermore, accusations often followed a predictable pattern. A man would consult a female healer for sexual problems. The treatment would fail or produce temporary results that faded. The man would conclude the woman had deliberately caused the problem she claimed to treat. Failed treatments led to accusations that the healer had deliberately caused the original problem. Yet individual accusations were just the beginning. The real power came from how they spread through communities. Storytelling amplified everything exponentially, but understanding how isolated accusations became widespread panic requires looking at the communication networks of medieval society. Individual accusations might have remained isolated, but medieval society had a perfect system for transforming local problems into widespread panic. Most people couldn't read, so they depended on spoken communication for all news. Stories about genital theft spread with incredible speed. Information traveled exclusively through word of mouth. Taverns served as ground zero for supernatural gossip. Taverns became centers for spreading supernatural gossip alongside regular drinks. Men would gather to share experiences with sexual problems and suspicious women. A single case of alleged penis theft would dominate conversation for weeks, with each retelling adding new details. But church gatherings provided another venue for spreading these stories. Priests would reference cases of genital theft in sermons as examples of Satan's attacks on Christian families. Church services included regular updates about supernatural threats in the community. Congregation members would continue discussing these cases after services. Market days brought people from different villages together, creating opportunities for stories to jump from one community to another. A case in one village would spread to neighboring settlements within weeks. Markets served as distribution networks for supernatural stories across different communities. Traders carried these stories across vast distances. Then there's how stories evolved as they spread. Each telling would add new details or emphasize different aspects. A simple complaint about sexual dysfunction would transform into an elaborate tale of magical theft and dramatic recovery. Stories grew more elaborate and dramatic with each retelling. More importantly, hearing these stories taught people how to interpret their own experiences. A man who had never considered supernatural explanations would suddenly recognize symptoms described in other accounts. Hearing these stories taught men to recognize supernatural explanations for their personal problems. The social aspect also created pressure to have similar experiences. Communities that had heard multiple cases would expect to see more among their members. Men with sexual problems would feel pressure to identify their issues as witchcraft rather than admit to ordinary dysfunction. Understanding how these beliefs took hold reveals something important about human psychology. When religious authority, medical expertise, detailed documentation, shared experiences, and social pressure all align, even the most bizarre ideas can become accepted reality across entire civilizations.